Lastly, let's talk about XDefiant. Something that's
What's going on, Scott?
I don't think they know what's going on. XDefiant, various rumors saying that the game was shutting down imminently. This comes, I don't know, like it gathered a bit of steam over the last sort of couple of months, but we did have Insider Gaming saying that XDefiant was on borrowed time internally with the site talking to people within Ubisoft, saying that they had until the end of the current gaming season, they're on season 3, to turn things around. Apparently the player count numbers were so low. 20,000 players was mentioned from the Insider Gaming side, and then whoever the source was they were talking to said, they'd be lucky to get 20,000. And so it became this talking point that XDefiant had dropped off because it did initially peak around 8 million concurrent players, and it did sit in the PlayStation Network's top 10 in the search bar for a good few weeks. I remember seeing it, being surprised that it was doing so well. I think it plays well enough, and it's a really good free Call of Duty, equivalent kind of thing. If you just want to play a good few matches casually and you're not bothered about anything else, XDefiant does work for that. But it only dropped off for the last few months since launch, leading to executive producer Mark Rubin to get on Twitter across the last few days to say, to be crystal clear, there are no plans to shut down after season 4. I've literally been in meetings as of last week to discuss our year 2 plans, but right now we are super focused on improving the technical experience, which includes netcode, and adding more content for seasons 3 and 4. We've done very little marketing, so yes, our numbers are down, but that's just to give the team the time to get the game in a better place before we do bigger spends on marketing to bring new players into the game and to bring back the players that have left. So it's just a talking point. Like, do people want XDefiant? Like, the fact that it dropped off so much when they were a bit more active with it, at least at the beginning, those numbers were definitely there. I don't want to poop all over it. I think they actually do have something here.
Yeah.
And I actually really I don't see enough people celebrating this. I do quite like the idea of them going, okay, we have Third Echelon from Splinter Cell. We have the Cleaners from The Division. We have the Rainbow Six guys, like as a squad, like Elite Team 6 or whatever. And trying to, I think it's ambitious in a safe way, in a Marvel crossover kind of way. But I do champion the idea of them going like, we do have these franchises and they have different identities and we can mush them together. And it does feel kind of cool in XDefiant to play as a Third Echelon spy going up against like a more military dude or whatever. So I think there is something there. And I think that you can refine those classes and do that kind of stuff. I don't think they've got there. Yeah. I put XDefiant down quite easily, but I see what they're going for.
I also see what they're going for. I just think about Ubisoft as a company, which, as you know, is not in a great state right now.
No.
And it's not like this thing can't bounce back. We saw something like Rainbow Six Siege go from an incredibly rocky launch to probably the most successful multiplayer game Ubisoft has ever published, certainly in the live service space. The fact that that thing is still ongoing, still releasing new content, still has a strong player base. I mean, I've not played that game in 5 years myself. I have no idea. I can't speak to the health. I used to love it. I can't speak to the health of it now, but just the fact that that hasn't been shut off in favor of a proper sequel, I think, is genuinely impressive. But I wonder, does XDefiant have that tail in it? I don't know, and I'll tell you for why. I'm not saying that these executives are lying. I'm sure they absolutely are mapping out year 2 now. It's just that you can't trust business.
That's the thing.
I know, bosses or whatever will tell you 1 month that you've got the next year planned out, and then 3 weeks later say, actually, we're shutting the studio down.
You find out in a blog post that you're not going in tomorrow.
Literally, you find out in a blog post. You're probably not even told. Jim Ryan will be visiting the studio one day, shaking hands, saying everything's all right, and then huge layoffs will be announced literally a month later. You know, that's what I would throw into the mix here. That yes, I do believe that discussions are happening and that plans are in place, but whether Ubisoft will stick to those plans, I don't know. We've seen so many publishers and developers get cold feet over their roadmaps that they've announced for live service games, because as soon as something starts going wrong, the confidence is thrown and they don't want to commit the resources and money to delivering on those things in the hope that they might get players back. I think that's one element. And another element is Scott Tailford, in about 1 week's time, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is releasing. It's direct competition. And that game, you know, who knows how that will go down, but it is receiving pretty good buzz. It did really well with the beta in the previews. It's obviously, like we mentioned, the first Call of Duty game on Game Pass. There's a lot of interest around it. That thing could kill XDefiant dead completely. I don't know.
That's the thing with XDefiant, that it managed to get a player base because it was in between Call of Duty installments. What was last year's COD again?
Modern Warfare 3.
Right. Okay. So that was a more negatively received COD. I know it still sold very well, but there was that conversation, and it's not what I want. I'm up for something else, kind of thing. And XDefiant rolled in. XDefiant is literally Overwatch meets COD. Like it's a more military style shooter with hero powers that are largely are sort of taken from Overwatch in regards to how you control them, and the feel of moving through those spaces. It's a blend of the two. Do people want something as safe as that? Like they did initially, but they kind of dropped off. The thing that I think is interesting is live services in general. I feel like you see so many publishers try this, and I wanted to point at Helldivers 2, something that was so incredibly positively received. It was like I could not get enough of it for that first few weeks, and then I had to go and have a kid like an idiot, and I lost it. But at the same time, funnily, that did coincide with everyone dropping off Helldivers 2. It's funny if you go and look at the player data, the player count across the last few months. Right now, they're back. Like the phrase "we're so back" is literally Helldivers 2 right now, and they did that by listening to the community. And Arrowhead, the developers, were quite intelligently moving a lot of their staff around. I'm forgetting the name, Johan Palstad, the guy that was initially the head of the team who moved on to more of a coding game dev side of things across the last few months, put a more basic number crunching guy in charge of that stuff and played to his strengths. And they all managed to get the project working again. They did all of that by listening to the community, and they did all of that off the general conversation that Helldivers 2 was effing awesome and people wanted it to succeed again. That isn't really the case with XDefiant.
Yeah.
XDefiant didn't have that, oh my God, I effing love this thing. I'm swearing a lot today, but they're loving that game. XDefiant didn't have that. XDefiant's energy was like, oh, okay, this isn't terrible. Oh, cool, okay, I can have a couple games, okay. Like, maybe you get back to, oh my God, it's not terrible. That's maybe as high as you can go.
I think there are two things to this. One, I'd echo what you said. I think publishers and developers completely underestimate how rock hard it is to, one, deliver a good live service game at launch, but two, to maintain that momentum and retain the player base that you caught, even if you manage to pull off a miracle and make a game that people want to play. We've seen so many titles, wax and wane as the months have gone on, and content hasn't been up to par or has been delayed, and players have been distracted with something else. Like, it's hard to maintain that player base, and I think that's why the most successful games within the space are astronomically successful, because they managed to find that secret sauce to get people constantly coming back and constantly playing and constantly paying. And I don't know if XDefiant, like you said, by definition,
yes,
even has that, because it was always positioned as a counter to Call of Duty. It was always positioned as something inherently more casual. Like, when I was watching the rollout and when I was playing the beta or what have you, their biggest sell was, this isn't Call of Duty. You don't have stuff like SBMM, skill-based / score-based matchmaking. You are just going to be put into teams with randoms. And while a lot of, frustrated Call of Duty players were ecstatic about that idea, it's a hard pill to swallow, even for myself. SBMM is in these games because it's the best way to retain the majority of players. Like, not having that in your game benefits the people who can stomp other people, which is a minuscule percentage of the overall player base. A lot of people who play shooters are just casuals who don't want to jump in and get absolutely annihilated and then say, screw this, I am out. Like, they want that kind of ability to be matched against players either of their same level or under them, so they can feel like they're progressing, they can feel like they're getting better, as maybe manipulative as that might be. Like, that's what keeps these games churning out new players and retaining players year after year. So XDefiant not having that and positioning itself as this kind of fun free-for-all, that is cool. That is definitely what the industry needs. It is a cool alternative to the biggest shooters out there. But like you said, is that enough to keep people in the long term when it's going against the conventional wisdom of what keeps people in the long term to begin with?
You mentioned the secret source. I think it's something that goes alongside the fact that what makes a secret source is a uniqueness. And like XDefiant doesn't really have that. I mentioned the different factions before. I will say, if Sam Fisher's in there, I'll play as him. Like, I don't know who else you can't really pull a Sam Fisher level character from those other franchises that are in there. Aiden Pierce from Watch Dogs. Yeah. Some dude from Rainbow Six and some dude from The Division. But I think you can maybe start to lean on those characters a little bit to at least get those fandoms involved. Ubisoft, I mean, this is a separate thing, but Ubisoft's whole handling of Splinter Cell is all over the place right now. Like, the remake's apparently still in production. I think there was a rumor the other week about, I think from Nick Baker, that there is a new Splinter Cell coming as well. The Netflix show is still to come. Like, but then there's no core thing holding it all together. So maybe for the sake of some Sam Fisher representation, he's then in XDefiant as a playable character, so we can play something with Sam Fisher in. But yeah, that idea of leaning more into the brands and leaning more into the those associated communities, maybe that's how you get it done. But like, no one on earth cares about Watch Dogs or The Division enough to be like, I'm going to go and fight the other guys. Like, it's just not really a thing.
And even what you described there to me is kind of a novelty. It's a fun novelty to be able to jump into a multiplayer game and be Sam Fisher, to be one of the operators from Rainbow Six Siege. But
I'll do it like once.
Exactly, right? It gets to the point, surely, where you just think, well, I'd just rather be playing those other games, and it's quite fun. But, you know, if these games live or die by their unlocks and battle passes, what comes next when you've already done Sam Fisher and you've already done a couple of costumes for him or what have you? And like you said, obviously, Watch Dogs, etc., are huge brands, but do they have that passion in the fan base where they would just like want to see, want to pay to play as characters or play as skins or use locations as maps and what have you? I personally don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe I'm biased as just not being as into those franchises as some other people might be.
There's some incensed Watch Dogs fan listening to the guy with the dude with the mask. I effing love that guy.
Hey, I love Marcus in the second game, but essentially
Watch Dogs 2 is legit pretty good.
100%. But even then, I'll enjoy that for half an hour for a casual game. Will I be in there for the long term? Will I be buying the battle pass? Battlefield 2042, I never bought a battle pass in that game, and I really enjoyed that game, especially after it was patched. So it takes me a lot to get that invested in a ecosystem, even something like Hunt Showdown, which I'm loving right now. Will I get the next battle pass? I don't know. I don't play it enough, and I certainly don't play XDefiant enough.
No, we should do a whole separate thing on the state of battle passes, because I feel like that if they are a fish, they've slapped me in the face. Like, I bought the Halo Infinite one, it was terrible. I bought Tekken 8 and it was terrible. Like, I never give in to battle passes unless the hype is sky high, and every time it's like, here's a charm to put on a gun.
Again,
like, what?
Like, it's you're right. Like, battle passes, like everything associated with a live service, they're hard to do. You've seen even the good ones are crap. You know what I mean? Even the good ones aren't that good. Like you said, they're full of tat, they're full of charms and skin and wallpapers and what have you, stickers that you're never going to use, sprays that no one's ever going to use in their entire life.
It's almost like fundamental to the way that they're developed, that they do it last. And it's just like, well, what can we? But fundamentally, this isn't the focus because the game is. So it's like, okay, we need some ancillary random tat to put in there.
100%. I mean, again, I always talk about Call of Duty. You look at Call of Duty, they've got the battle pass, they've got the store which sells skins that aren't in the battle pass. Then you've got the premium battle pass that costs 25 real world quid that you don't get to pay your in-game coins to buy, and it makes your guys have shiny black armor and sometimes gold, and it's like you've got all of these different revenue streams, and that's an example of a good one. That's an example of one that you actually might want to pay into, you know, no matter if it has Michael Myers being the guest character or whatnot. Like, it I know a lot of people rag on that, and rightly so. It does make Call of Duty lack an identity, but like, it also makes Call of Duty a lot of money to do those crossovers and get those skins in, because there is, I think, a limit to what you can do within your own game universe if you want to get the max amount of players in. I'm not talking about like creative integrity. I'm not talking about sticking to it. I'm not saying like these games are lacking in personality. I'm just talking about if you want to make the money to justify these things long term and not face the risk of being axed, you have to sell your soul a little bit and get, you know, all of these crossovers and things that people will say, hey, you know what? That's worth 15 quid to have a laugh, to play as Goku with my friends, you know? As tragic as it is, like, yeah, that's the model that works.
It is insane, with everything said, that is the reality of live services battle passes. And XDefiant itself, at least right now,